Hey everybody, before I begin, I have a few things I wanted to announce. As you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, or maybe you're listening to this on your podcast player, this is the first episode in my brand new office studio. At the time of the recording this episode with Jaim, it was still getting set up. So I apologize for some issues with the audio in that episode. Regardless, the content is fantastic, so definitely check that out. I just need to set up a green screen, so hopefully in the next few episodes you'll see that up in my announcements. Next, I wanted to say that if you're not subscribed to the Bright Digit newsletter, you should. There's some really cool new newsletters that came out. Issue 100 went over our top articles, so that if you're going to get started, that's a great one to get started with, to see some of the cool stuff that we've put out. And then issue number 101 was about my trip to London and server-side Swift conference and some of the great talks that were there. We have videos, links to all the videos of all the talks, including mine. So if you want to know how that went, you'll definitely want to check both of those out and subscribe to the Bright Digit newsletter. Next, I'm still looking for folks who are interested in beta testing Bushel. Bushel 2, I'm hoping to release by the end of the year, which will be just in time for the 1 year anniversary. I'm really, if you're interested in the development and how that's going, you should subscribe to the YouTube channel because I've been live streaming every 9 a.m. on Tuesday in my time zone, EDT, EST, depending on whether this is before November or not. And yeah, just go to getbushel.com. I'm adding in a screen recording and some stuff there for folks to be able to record the work that they're doing on their VM and take screenshots and stuff. So definitely check that out. And lastly, we have a Patreon. If you are really enjoying my content, I would appreciate your support. It'd be greatly appreciated. I release these episodes uncut early on there. I might put out some drafts of content that I'm working on, things like that. So definitely check that out as well. Patreon.com/brightdigit. All the links will be in the show notes. And that's about it. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day and enjoy this episode. Welcome to another episode of Empower Apps. I'm your host, Leo Dion. Back from 5 years ago, we have Jaim Zuber from episode 11. Jaim, thank you so much for coming back on. It's been a while.
Yeah, probably five years or so. But yeah, glad to be back, and I've been enjoying all the stuff you've been posting since then.
Well, thank you. So for those who don't remember episode 11, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Jaim Zuber. I've been working on Apple platforms almost exclusively, not entirely, for the past 14 years. Started maybe 2011, mostly iOS, a little bit of Mac, here and there as needed. But a lot of that was as a consultant. So I was doing independent work, got a chance to work with really cool apps, especially in the 2010s. Over the past 3 years, I switched gears. I took a leadership role. So I was the director of engineering for a digital bank. Did that, enjoyed it. So I did kind of manager / director / principal engineer. Enjoyed it, but that ended earlier this year due to layoffs. That's a pretty common trend throughout the industry of people just being laid off. That's hitting everyone. So yeah, I got back to consulting, a little more hands-on work, enjoying it, being able to write code every day. So I'm doing that now and kind of looking for work, looking for a full-time job while doing some consulting work. And that kind of brings us up into our topic, which we're going to talk about: how do you navigate this job market, which is unlike most of us have ever seen.
Yeah, and I've been doing this for 25 years now, and I've been through recessions, but nothing like this, where it's not really a recession, but tech has been hit particularly poorly. Just kind of, what's your thoughts on what's changed? Why is it different this time? What are you finding out there?
Yeah, I mean, what's different is we had a gold rush for years, a decade. Interest rates were close to zero, so tons of people were pouring money into startups. Big tech had just infinite money to spend. Everyone's hiring, and we all we all benefited from that. Salaries skyrocketed. We've all done pretty well in that era, and that ended. Interest rates went back up. We printed a bunch of money during the downturn, and we're kind of paying for that now. We're trying to keep it from macroeconomic forces. We're trying to keep inflation lower, and that's affecting us. But we've had a great run. It's just an adjustment right now where we have to a new type of market.
Yeah, and part of it, I've seen this as far as a homeowner. I've been affected by the interest rates, so I totally get it. Just buying a new house, and then also the fact that, it seems to me like AI has kind of sucked all the oxygen in the room as far as like any tech spending that there is. It's all going towards basically AI research. People think that they're going to get a lot of return off of that. I'm very doubtful that it's going to be the revolution people think it is. And I think, that's made it really difficult. On top of that, I've also just seen issues with basically like I don't know if it's the term ghost posting, but like there's just a ton of posts out there, and there's a ton of people applying, and then on top of it, there's just a lot of garbage as far as job postings are concerned, and so it's like hard to navigate that as well.
That's true. I think, the jobs are out there. I think there are companies with openings. It's just very competitive for the openings that are out there. And like you said, there are companies that just post things to look good, or
Right.
jobs that they have no intention of hiring, or just don't quite have the budget yet. So there are a lot of postings that aren't real, but I think the jobs aren't out there. I think the challenge is it's just super competitive. There's way more people looking than there ever have been before. There's tons of layoffs in the industry over the past year or two. HR was a big part of layoffs. Like if a company's not going to expand, they got rid of HR.
Yep.
So they were already understaffed over the past year. If they're hiring,
I've seen that a lot.
You got one HR person. They were already overworked, and now they're completely overworked trying to hire for this position, and they've got 200 resumes to look at. Half are not real people, the AI generated or some scam, and they've got to scan a resume for 5 seconds and figure out if you're the right person or not. It's just that's the game. That's the game we're in. 3 years ago, my resume could get a return call from like 80-90% of the things I sent for. But that would be like lead, staff, principal type things typically. Now it's closer to 10, maybe 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So let's talk a little bit about what you've been doing to like navigate that market, or maybe even pivot in your career as a lead, principal, senior iOS developer.
yeah, let's talk about more kind of the hands-on things you can do. First thing I did is just tightened up my resume. Make sure it was like 4 or 5 pages. It was just long, and it worked. I had no reason to mess with it before, but now you want to tighten it up. You want to have the stuff that's directly relevant to the job you're applying for right at the top, because the person scanning your resume is going to look at the first 3 bullet points, and if it's not a match, you're done. You're out, and I'll never see you again. So it's important to have a resume that's really tuned for the position you're applying for. If you're applying for a senior engineer position, your resume is going to be very different from an engineering manager, or even a staff or lead engineer.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a senior engineer, mid-level engineer, make sure your hands-on skills are right up front. Features that you worked on, stuff that you did. If it's a lead, make sure that leadership's up top, that you've led teams, things like that. If you're a staff principal, make sure that you've been able to show impact like beyond your team.
Right.
Like, hey, I helped my whole organization improve their test coverage or whatever.
Right.
We helped
Right.
improve documentation, which allowed the teams to move faster. Things like that. So I've got a different resume for each type of role that I apply for.
So one of the things you're talking about here is like tailoring each resume for each position. How do you? There's just so many positions out there. That seems like a lot of work to have to like. If I'm gonna apply to like 10 or 20 positions, to have to make 10 or 20 resumes. Is there a simpler, more optimal way to do that so you can apply to a lot of positions, but at the same time, like not waste time? Because like
Right.
you could end up basically not going anywhere with it because you know the I'd rather have more applications, more resumes posted than necessarily making every single one perfect, if that makes sense.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're not going to rewrite your resume for every job post that's out there. That's not something that's really doable. I've got 3 or 4 basic standard ones that I
Okay.
have. Like my if it's something like a lead engineer, it's one thing. If it's the staff or principal, it's another. If it's the engineering manager, it's one. If it's a director, because those are all different things that they're going to look for
Right.
that experience. So I've got like 4 basic templates that I use, and it's all the same content. It's just some's higher, some's lower. Um, but you know, I would definitely say pick your spots for the roles that you apply for.
Okay.
Look ones that are really good fits. Like, yep, I can walk in there with a straight face and say I'm the exact right person they want to hire for this.
Yeah.
Start with those. Start with and put time in. I'd say invest time in it. If you're looking for work, you got time.
Right.
And
Right.
like looking for work is a full-time job. It's it when you're doing it, it takes time. It's draining. It's not easy. So my approach is like just pick the best ones, but it's also important to use your time wisely. Say
Right.
is this
Right.
the type of thing that's going to get me to the next phase? Maybe not. And even if I have the perfect resume for the perfect job, you get bounced. So
Right. What do you think about cover letters?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay.
One thing AI can help them with that. That's one thing AI is good for.
Right. Right.
You
I
can
mean,
just say,
like, yeah, I think that's a good point. It's just like, well, cover letter is a little bit like, to me, it'd be like emailing somebody or messaging someone in HR at a particular company and being, hey, I posted here. I really know a lot about Swift concurrency and migrating to Swift concurrency. I think I could really help out your team. Like, be very specific when you in your cover letter or in your contact of that person about why you are a great fit. Like, show that you actually read the requirements and what they're looking for. And I think that goes a long way to getting your name out there.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely have everything in your cover letter be true, even if
Yeah.
you can start with AI. And I don't really know.
You could start with AI, but like don't let it be too generic and sound like a bunch of nonsense, which
Yeah.
can happen.
Oh yeah, the HR person, I'm sure they can spot an
Right.
AI generated resume right there. So you have to be able to stand behind everything that's in there. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I told my team would, when I was the director, my team would submit documentation that was AI driven. I was like, okay, that's okay, but you have to stand behind everything that's in there.
Right. Right.
It's still you submitting it, even if something else wrote it. So it's good. It's okay for a starting point, but yeah, don't lean too hard into it. And really, I don't really know. I don't know if cover letters are worth it anymore. Like,
I mean,
3 years,
cover letter
3 years
to
ago,
me doesn't necessarily mean cover letter like something super fancy. It just more means like a paragraph or a couple sentences just saying, hey, I'm interested in this position. I saw this, like, this would be great for me. Here's why you should hire me. And I've attached my resume and call it good. I don't know what more a cover letter should be, but I don't think it needs to be more than that right now.
yeah, it could be lightweight. And like 3 years ago, I didn't even bother them. I
Yep.
just sent it out there, and I think no one did. Now
Right.
it's like, I don't know. I don't have any info to say you should do a cover letter. I don't know
Right,
if they
right.
help. I don't know if they don't look at the resume you're dead in the water anyway. So
That's true.
uh,
That's a really
I
good
do
point.
I do have a summary at the top of my resume, which is a newer thing, which kind of explains like, yeah, I've been a manager, I've been a director, but now I'm trying to be hands-on, you know. So just a kind of summary, which can do some cover letter type things. So that's one thing I did add to my resume based on some advice that I read.
So I've been doing this for like 25 years now, and I mean, I've done a lot. I've done a lot of work in that time. How many pages should I have? Like, how many pages is too many? And how do I like summarize it in such a way that somebody's going to be interested in it, if that makes sense?
Right. I think the standard answer is you want it at 2 pages. Like I never did this before. Like 3 years ago when I was looking, it was like 4 or 5 pages because I've been doing this a long time. Like you had a lot of cool stuff on there that I had done. And I figured, and people would dig into the old stuff, you know, like in an interview or something. They may like, oh, I worked with this technology. It's just a way to, you know, connect with the person who's interviewing you. But I think nowadays, like HR expects it to be, 2 pages. Have all the good stuff right up front. Like no one really cares what you did. I mean, even 5 years ago.
Right,
You know?
right.
It's like, it's all like, what have you done lately? Especially with this market where there's so many resumes out there. Like you want to make sure everything that's relevant to this job is right up front.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I think of is like, oh, if there's something I want to mention, that like, oh, I have this experience, I know how to learn new things, I know how to lead a team. The more abstract stuff, I think, would be helpful on a resume. But otherwise, if it's newer technology, where they're just like, I just want you to make sure you know the latest technology, like that's it. Then, yeah, it makes total sense to just have like the latest 5 years of work that you've done in Swift UI, for instance. What you have any other tips when it comes to resumes, like gotchas or do's or don'ts?
Yeah, not sure. I wouldn't say I'm an
Windex, is that the preferred font now?
Windings. Yeah, that's definitely the way to go. One tip I did learn is that I always exported mine to PDF because, like, some back in the day, like recruiters would literally change your resume if you submit it in Word or something like that. I've had recruiters do that, like sketchy stuff. So I always did a PDF, and if you submit it, it's gonna be harder for the tracking system to like read all the stuff out of there for your experience. So you're gonna go there and fix a bunch of stuff. So be able to export to like Word format, and Pages can do that. So you can do that from your Mac, like with everything. But especially if anything Workday, export it to the Word document. You'll be happier.
So my anecdote is I recently submitted a markdown resume in Workday, and it was marked as spam. So I now have I'll post a link to it in the show notes, but I have a markdown to PDF converter that runs a GitHub action because that's where I have my resume. So hopefully from now on I won't have that issue. But yeah, it sucks. Because like Workday especially, it's just like it's not going to look at it. It's not going to check what it looks like. So you think like you think Microsoft Word is better than PDF?
Yeah, especially for things where they're scanning it and trying to get it for your experience. So like Workday does that. And
they don't scan PDFs?
They do. They just make a lot of mistakes. So I had to go through like any like small I had to like fix. Every version of every time Swift was mentioned in my resume, which is everywhere, I had to go and change it. That got fixed.
What did it do with Swift?
Any like little I, lowercase I, it just got it wrong. So any word with lowercase I had to go and fix once it's already in there. So the automatic import worked a lot better with a Word doc. Workday is a terrible software from the hiring side and from the applicant side.
And it's like, what was I going to say? And now with these like cut HR departments, they just are going to totally rely on a piece of crap to do it. That sucks.
Yeah.
how, what do you think of like formatting, like keep it all one font, bold out things that you think are going to really catch people's eye, maybe use headers properly?
I think all of those things. Like I'm not.
Uh,
I wouldn't be
but
the
don't be
grand expert for
adventurous, I
all.
guess is what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah.
just think of it from the HR person who's going to want to look at this quickly and just be like, yes, no. And then, do you think links work? Like, people will actually, like, look at it and be like, yeah, I want to pull this up and see what they actually did, or,
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't really have any links in mind. I
okay.
just know like there's a good site. It's in the show notes from Gurgi Arosh, who's done a lot of writing on the
Yep.
tech industry. He's got the resume template site. He's got a book on the engineering tech resume, and he
Okay.
just gives out tons of good advice.
We'll put
Like,
that in the show notes.
yeah,
So definitely take a look at that.
that's in the notes. But yeah, have as much as you can have a standard format. Don't get too weird. HR is used to looking at something in a certain format. Don't mess with it. They got 3 to 5 seconds to scan your resume, and they're going to look for the place they're used to looking for the stuff they want to see.
Okay, let's jump to talking about, like, do you want to talk about navigating the market, or do you want to talk about switching between leadership and development?
Yeah, I mean they're interrelated. Like last year, like I had a job, I saw all these layoffs happening. I looked at kind of my skill set, and like I've got 2 years of like actual literal engineering management experience, even though I ran a software company, consulting company. I ran a band, music band. Like, well, so I came in pretty high level, understanding the role of an engineering manager. So like my equivalent experience is a lot higher than 2 years, but that's what it's on my resume. And if you're applying and they don't know you, that's what they're going to look at. So I was kind of like looking at my skill set and like if something happens, like my engineering skills are going to be the most portable. That's going to help me get the next job more likely than kind of the engineering management, at least until the market improves. Once the market improves, then you can do a lot of things because I had a lot of interest in my resume for engineering management 3 years ago, where now those are really tough to get. A lot of the layoffs in the industry, that was the managers, the directors, so middle management,
Okay.
flattening has
I was
been the
going to
trend.
ask about that.
Yeah, so any engineering manager, any engineering manager role that's open, I have way more applicants than they would have, a couple of years ago.
Right.
And the people that have been doing it for 5-10 years, a lot of times at pretty big name companies. So I kind of knew that just by my resume, I wasn't going to stand out, and I'm getting in the loop for some of those roles, but realistically, like the engineering skills are probably going to make the next move happen.
Okay.
But that's not a step back in my book. One blog post I read years ago, Charity Majors wrote a blog post on the pendulum theory that says the most effective engineers have spent time in management. The best managers aren't more than 3 years removed from hands-on work.
Yeah.
To paraphrase. So she recommended going back and forth. Go into leadership a little bit, come back,
I like that a lot.
sharpen up your tech skills. That works for me because I get bored doing one thing for 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
So
Yes.
getting a change of pace works great for me.
Do you, when you say manager, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of managers, like project manager or product manager or just like a boss, so to speak. Like, what kind of manager role do you think is more apt for somebody who's in engineering?
Yeah, I mean, the typical path is, most people listening to this are iOS engineers, mobile
Right.
engineers of some sort, hands-on skills. Typically, you go into engineering management. Product management, totally different thing. There are a lot of engineers that go into product management. That's where you're managing a product, not people necessarily, at least. So,
Right.
a lot of engineers go into product. Project management, program management, that's more that's a different thing altogether.
Right.
That's kind of making sure projects and things bigger than one project kind of move smoothly. But typically, the engineering path is for like a senior engineer, if they've got a good reputation at the company, people like them, like working with them, they know the tech stack, they know the domain, they're a good fit to go into management. Typically, that's how people get their first chance at engineering management. So at that point, you're leading team. Like they report to you. You have to go
Right.
into work. You have to go into Workday to manage a bunch of stuff. That's why the managers don't like Workday either. It's just kind
Right.
of it's rough.
One thing, I forgot which episode it was, but we had talked about management, and one of the things that I do like, and I've learned as I've grown more mature, is the thing about being a manager is, as like a developer, who, especially somebody who's indie like myself, it's like I can't get everything I want done. I need to get somebody to help me. And I end up becoming a manager because I have like a couple of people who are helping me on certain products or projects that I'm working on. And that's where I've seen like the manager be kind of not augmenting, but just being able to like multiply yourself in the work that you do, if that makes sense. And I think that's where the manager skill is really helpful, because if you do it all by yourself, you're just not going to get as much done. But if you have 2 or 3 other people doing it with you and you're managing them and breaking things into tasks, knowing how to organize stuff, I think that's where becoming a manager, that's where it kind of clicked with me, where like becoming a manager is just being an engineer who can multiply themselves, so to speak. Does that make sense?
I think so. I mean, yeah. If I look throughout my career, like at least the first decade, like I saw what my managers did, and I didn't want to do it. I was
Right.
like, I don't want to do this. They just go to meetings, they
Right.
do a bunch of paperwork. I didn't want to do it, but I think like you said, I got frustrated with like poor management or just mismanagement. It's like, if I could have done that, I could have avoided a lot of these pain points
Right.
that the team is facing. So like, just let me handle that. I can do it. Did that. I
Right.
don't necessarily want to do it, but like I'm happy to do it just to make everyone else's life easier.
Right.
So I think I think the challenge is like scaling yourself.
Right.
It's like help instead of like making yourself an effective member of a team, making an effective team,
Right.
or making an effective organization where everyone's working together.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think of it as from the indie perspective, where I'm pretty much directing myself in everything I do, to where it's like you get to a point in your career where you realize you're not going to get any faster at coding. You're kind of like, people are like, oh, I got like this product done in a week, and then you realize they didn't add any tests and it barely works. And
Right.
if you do one right, but they're so proud of how fast they are, and you realize being fast isn't everything. And that if you want to get more done, you just need more people, and you need to like manage them and teach them and so on. That's just kind of what has been my revelation over the last year. Do you? I think one of the things that somebody might say is like, oh, I don't want to manage because I don't want to deal with like somebody above me basically pushing me to do things that I don't think I can do. Like, you know what I mean? Like an executive is like, we got to get this done in a week, get it done.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, if we do that, it's going to break. That kind of stuff where you're just
Yep.
kind of like having to deal with that kind of crap. Like, what do you say to somebody like that?
Yeah. I mean, but that's at every level, right?
Thank you.
Could be
That's what I was gonna say,
You
yes.
you could be a mid-level engineer, and they're like, you need to get this done in 2
Right.
days.
Yeah.
So if the higher your level, the more skin you have in the game to push back. But you have to be smart about it and talk in with the type of values that the people above you, your manager, director, vice president, can understand. Like, if we get this done, we're going to burn the team out, and we're not going to be able to do things for the next 6 months.
Right. Right.
There's going to be, we can't do it with the quality that we have, so that an enlightened view is like, you have to think of the long-term benefits to the team, to the company. Like if you
Right.
burn your team out, you really suffer with bugs. Like, is that worth getting that out? Sometimes yes. Sometimes it makes sense to like, crunch something out
Yeah.
there for the business, especially a startup. Dates are important.
Right.
But if you burn your team out, then they can't continue to iterate on the things that you want them to do. So you have to make sure that you're presenting all the terms in the things that the people at every level value.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Um. So let's talk about what what are, can you think of any specific benefits to each of these tracks, and why you may not want to stay in too long, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you mean like just engineering versus management, upper
Yeah,
management?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I've seen enough where I can make calls on that. Like, if you don't want to deal with stuff outside of your team as much, you can be a senior engineer. You can be a worker bee, crank out features, functionality, and do that. That's fine for a lot of people. You don't really need to go beyond that to have a good career. I got to the point where I got bored, just cranking out table views year after year.
Is that what it was? It was cranking out table views.
I mean, there's more to it than that, but like, okay, we need another screen here. Here's another table view. Like, I've been doing
Yeah.
this for 10 years. I can still do it,
So
Even
Swift
with
UI
UI.
just did not
No,
come in soon enough.
no, not so much that, but just like, okay, I can learn Swift UI. Here's another way to do the same thing we've been doing for,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
20 years. Like, I started doing Windows apps.
Right, right.
Back in the day, embedded stuff, Windows apps, some Mac, but so you can do that. It's a good career, but like you're just downstream from all the decisions that get made in
Right.
the company, and that got frustrating for me because like I could have prevented these headaches that we're all having right now had I been in the room where they're making these calls, So maybe you could be a tech lead, maybe be a tech lead manager where you're a little hands-on, working more closely with people outside of the team, with product management, back end, web teams. That's also, you're still pretty hands-on. Your time is less spent hands-on coding. You're directing things. You're mentoring, things like that. And that's also a great way to spend a career. You don't have to go beyond that. If you like doing it, you can do it. So management is a totally different thing. You have a totally different schedule. Like you barely have any time to write code. And you shouldn't be writing a lot of code.
Okay. I was going to ask that because, do you think that a manager should never write code? That's like one of the big questions.
Definitely, I didn't say never.
Okay.
You shouldn't be writing a lot of code, and you shouldn't be in the critical path because you're going to get distracted 10 times today.
Right.
So
right.
if you need to get this feature out so the rest of the team can do their work, you're the bottleneck.
I mean, I think like a little bit of code and a little bit of PR review and code review would be good just to keep yourself knowledgeable about what is going on underneath and keeping quality good. Otherwise, I wouldn't assign somebody. I wouldn't assign a manager to a feature per se, unless you absolutely had to. You know what I mean?
Right.
Does that sound about right? Do you agree?
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, even my title was director, so I had managers reporting to me, and also engineers and led teams. So I still was reviewing code. I was in charge of making sure the architecture was what we wanted, even if I wasn't the person. I wasn't dictating everything. I was letting the team make the calls. I would ask the right questions to make sure that they understood the priorities,
ramifications.
That they but they kind of like this is. But one of the first things one of the most important lessons you have to learn if you're a manager is like you can't dictate everything. So that's a recipe for failure. The absolute worst managers you've ever worked for tried to be the tech lead as the manager because you can't just tell everyone what to do. They need to figure things out on their own.
Right.
Even if it's not exactly what you'd have done, like maybe my solution was 80% of the right solution and theirs is 70%, like you'd let them run with it. because it lets us move forward. They're bought into it. So if something
Right.
goes wrong,
They have
it's like,
ownership.
okay, that they own it versus I
They
told you
know
to
how
do
it
it.
works. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
It's
really
like,
good.
so that was one thing I had to let go on. Like, not everything was going to be as perfect as it would have been if I would have done it. Um, but I think overall, we all move faster.
Yep.
And ultimately, the managers make sure that everything is appropriate level quality, test coverage, all those things. But not every one thing has to be optimized like the way I would have done it.
Yeah. Totally. 100%. Um, Anything else you want to talk about jobs and resumes and careers?
So that's plenty. But if you have a question, I'll answer it. But that's how much.
So what have you been working on lately?
So yeah, I mean, given I got the notice I was going to get laid off in February, kind of looked at my skill set. I'm like, man, I need to catch up on Swift UI because we weren't doing that much with
Okay.
we had a little bit proof of concept here and there, but we weren't heavy with it. So like, I need to catch up on that. So been wrapping up on Swift UI. Helped worked with a company, helped them with their hiring loop. So like the first half of this year, I was still a hiring manager. I was like hiring people. And the second half, I'm the job seeker.
Okay.
Not just how it goes. That's how it goes sometimes. But it's been had a little break, so that ended earlier this year. So I'm kind of in job seeking mode. I've been writing, so digging into Swift Concurrency. Got a chance to work with it with my last client. So
Okay.
they had started using kind of the tasks and async await, asynchronous coding with Swift. So
Actors?
actors. Got a chance to dig into all that. So I've been going
Swift
through that thing.
6 or still Swift 5?
Yeah, so that was still Swift 5 because Xcode 16 was not out yet.
Yep, yep.
But I got a chance to work with the tasks and kind of actors, things like that. So got my foot with that, and at the time I was like, oh no, I'm so far behind. I've been away from code for 2 years. I'm done. I don't know. I'm completely lost. And like I looked there. I went to One More Thing Conf in Cupertino.
Yep.
And I
Yeah, I saw
realized
you
like no one's doing this yet. I was like, okay, good. I was like, I'm so far behind. I'm done. Stick a fork at me, but no one's doing.
Really big challenge. I've seen that a lot lately.
Yeah,
My head has been totally into it, like especially the Swift 6 stuff with async await, and like when I talk to other people, they're just like, "Oh my gosh, it's so hard and so difficult."
yeah, it's a mind meld. It took me a little bit of time to get used to it. Now, like I love it. I think it's.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's huge. I think it's especially for big teams. Like if you're a lead engineer.
Have you done
staff
anything with
engineer.
Swift 6 and async await because it's a lot more strict?
Well, you could always turn on the strict checking.
Right,
in
I know.
Swift 5.
Oh, I know that. I know that.
Okay, I mean,
But I'm a glutton for punishment, so
yeah. So we were always turning it on, turning it off to see where we're at. So
okay.
I mean,
That's a great
I'm, at
way
the,
to do
I'm
it.
at the point where, yeah, I have no problem building an app in Swift 6.
Okay.
It's largely a lot of the stuff that we already should have been doing, like use structs instead of classes.
Right.
Make things stateless that you can just pass around that no one cares what thread they're operating on. So, yeah, I'm a big fan, especially for as like a staff type role where like you probably can't review every line of code that comes through your code base if you get a big enough team. Swift Concurrency allows us to do that checking at compile time. A lot of those things. A lot of those because like, in classic iPhone development, you just throw off a, async, block whenever you want to, and it's fine.
Right.
Nothing really bad happens until a lot of people start doing it, and then things start crashing.
It extends the sort of like, I don't know if you remember when we had the transition to Swift, but like people were pissed about how like optional or int and double and like all these types had to be the type that they actually were, whereas in Objective-C everything was loosey-goosey.
Right.
And so people were pissed because it's like, God, I got to convert this decimal point number to an int and I've got to do it all manually.
Right.
And I sort of feel like that's essentially what Swift 6 is with concurrency. It's like, no, you have to like make sure that you don't change a thing unless it's, if it's sendable, you got to do it properly, or you have to have an actor to make sure that two things don't come in and you have a race condition and all this kind of stuff. It's like introducing that safety when it comes to concurrency, which I think is really fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the type stuff in Swift is a little bit ugly, but at least you're being explicit about what's happening, which I think is just valuable.
I mean, it's safer, I think, too. Like, especially optionals.
Yeah.
I still don't, when I have to go back into Objective-C code, I'm not happy about having to deal with that.
Where's my iflet? Where's my iflet? I just want to, I want to guard this.
Yeah,
please.
Right. Because everything is optional in Objective-C, right? So it's like, yeah.
But I agree with your analogy, but like if you're working with the legacy code base that's been around for 5-10 years, like it's gonna be really hard.
No, don't go to strict. Build maybe your new libraries or your new frameworks strict, but like don't migrate your old code. We could talk about migrating old code until the day is done. There would not be a short podcast episode because there's so many things about it. I'll link so I have a couple articles I'll link in the show notes, one to migrating, and then I did a sort of very basic how to migrate Swift 6 besides the excellent one that Holly and Matt did on the Apple site, but I have a very basic one for beginners if they're interested. There's something else I was going to mention. I can't remember. I guess that's what happens. But yeah. Do you miss GCD?
I still like it. I think it's the...
Why?
What's that? I'm glad because I dug in and got to know it so well.
Oh, okay.
And I think not every scenario is going to be covered by structured concurrency. I think it's kind of a Swift UI versus UI kit where like if you stay in the lane with Swift UI, you're fine.
Right.
It's getting better. But if you got really custom things, like you
tune into our previous episode with Ben if you want to do custom things.
I listened to it.
Yeah.
It was great. That was great stuff. It's if you want to do really custom things, it's gonna be painful. If you stay in your lane, you're fine.
Right.
I think. But if you want to do like some esoteric things with concurrency and threading,
pull to refresh. Yeah.
GCD it's still there, and it's powerful.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we close out?
I think that's pretty good. So I'll throw a couple links to some of the books that help me understand the role of like an engineering manager and engineering leader. Like Manager's Path from Camille Fournier, Resilient Management, Laura Hogan. Those are both excellent. If you have any interest in being a manager or in leadership, buy those books, read them. Even if you don't, you'll at least understand the role. Like you'll understand what your boss is doing, what they're supposed to be doing, what your director is supposed to be doing. Like Manager's Path talks about the whole stack up to like CTO, VP. It's like I didn't really know what a VP did until I was a director and interacted with the VP. Now I know. Okay, but like just going through that book just kind of helps you understand what people above you are trying to solve, so you can help them do their thing, make yourself look good. Everybody wins.
James, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being my guinea pig first episode in the new house. We learned the importance of directly hooking up a webcam to a Mac Studio instead of going through a hub. So that's been fantastic. We've been good for the last half hour. James, where can people find you online?
So jaimzuber.com is where I'm doing most of my writing. I'm on Mastodon. That's really the only place I really post. You can find me there. I'll put a link in the notes.
Awesome. People should check out our latest newsletters. I just posted Newsletter 101 on my experience at server-side Swift. Check that out. Check out my link to my talk I did in London, which was awesome. It was great to see everybody there and talk about fitness, working out, and server-side Swift and GB. So a lot of great stuff in the latest newsletter. Check that out. If you have any more questions about resumes, hiring, any of that stuff, reach out to me on Twitter or email or whatever you have. Twitter, at LeoGDion, and Mastodon at LeoGDion at c.im. Brightdigit.com is my website. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.